Good day, everyone. I'm Sir Romel Antonio, and I will be your statistics teacher for second semester. And today we will have our first discussion on random variables. Let us be guided of the following objective. So at the end of this discussion, you should be able to illustrate a random variable and distinguish between a discrete and a continuous random variable. As well as, you should be able to find the possible values of a random variable. Before we accomplish the following objective and go through the lesson, let us recall what is a random experiment. So always remember that a random experiment is a process or a procedure that has a definite or well-defined outcomes. So very familiar tayo dito sa statistics. So mga experiments na to. We have these classical experiments that we always use to explain statistics, and these are tossing a coin, yung mga rolling a die, ano pa? Yan, yung deck of cards, yung mga colored balls in an urn. Yan. So yun yung mga example of a random experiment. So I have here some example of experiments: tossing a coin, exam marks, course grades, rolling a die, the number of iPhones sold by an Apple store in the Philippines in 2019, and assembly time o yung oras. So as being defined, dapat ang experiment na to ay leading to a well-defined outcomes. So in tossing a coin, we have here head or tail. Exam marks, we have your numbers from 0 to 100 if it is percentage. Course grades, pwedeng kung ano yung course grade na ginagamit. Pag letter grade, ito siya, F, D, C, B, A, A+. Yan, and so on. Rolling a die, familiar na tayo dyan, number of dots yan, 1 to 6. So in the number of iPhones sold, pwede tayo, numbers yan from 0 up to infinity. Or assembly time, it could be expressed into t greater than 0 seconds. Ibig sabihin, seconds after 0. No? Yun yung ating outcome. So there are many ways to express the outcome of an experiment. And when we are talking about the outcome, so when you try to list down all the possible outcome of an experiment, all, sabi wala kang makakalimutan. We are now pertaining to sample space. No? Sample space is defined as a set of all possible outcomes. Again, all possible outcomes in a random experiment. So we're tossing a coin. So the sample space for this are head and tail. Now you have to put braces. No? It signifies that the element inside the braces are the outcomes, and it pertains to sample space. Rolling a die, 1 to 6, yan, course grade. Yan. So it's either of the two, kung ano yung grades na pinag-uusapan natin. Yan. So if we were be able to recall the random experiment and the outcome of each of those experiment or procedure, we can now proceed to what is random variable. So when we say random variable, it takes a defined set of values with different probabilities. We are still pertaining to random experiment. But when we talk about random variable, we are going to represent the outcome of these random experiments previously mentioned, no, by a real number. Ibig sabihin, i-assignan natin sila ng values. Kasi most of the time in a real life situation, the outcome of an experiment are not in numerical form. No, for example, kuha ka ng bola sa isang basket, anong kulay yung nakuha mo? What's the probability of getting yellow? Pero hindi siya in number form. So here in our discussion, we are going to assign values on those outcome of an experiment. No? We will go deeper into that. So here are our examples of random variables. So when you try to experiment or doing a random experiment of rolling 2 dice, nag-roll kayo ng 2 dice, there are plenty of variable that we can assign to the outcome of this experiment. Kaya nga siya tinawag na random. No? One could be, let x be the random variable which assign the values as the sum of the dots. No, yung ating variable x will be the sum of the dots on the up faces of the dice. Yung mga nasa unahan, kaya siya tinawag na up faces. Yung nasa top most face ng dice. Yan. So, kukunin lang natin yung sum nila. So, in short, i-add lang natin. No? Kung 5 tapos 6, so we have 11. Kasi we have this 5 and 6, we cannot assign, we don't have assigned value on this outcome. So, kailangan maggawa tayo ng condition. So, we find the sum. Other than that, we can also find the difference of the dots on the up faces of the dice. Pwede mo rin hanapin yung difference. For example, you have 5 and you have 2. So, the outcome of that experiment will be 3. No? Yan. So, yan yung mga rule natin when it comes to random experiment. No? When we say random variable, we will assign values on these outcomes. Another example, kapag nagsagot tayo ng 10-question test or exam, ang pinaka-common random variable na ginagawa ng mga teacher dyan is let the score of the student be the number of correct item. Yun yung napakadali nating random variable for that. Pero minsan may mga teacher na let x be twice the sum of the number of the items answered correctly. Ibig sabihin, each of the correct item will be marked 2 points. So, another random variable yon na malalagyan natin siya ng value. Yung iba namang teacher, medyo, should we say, medyo, traumatic ang kanya naranasan sa kanyang mga teacher. Ang ginagawa nila, right minus wrong. Now, let y be obtained by subtracting the total number of correct items by the total number of mistakes. So, ginagawa nila right minus wrong. So, these are the many ways of giving scores to a 10-item question. Again, this is called the random variable. So, we are assigning values. No? Naglalagay tayo ng mga values. We have two types of random variables. The first one is discrete. The second one is the continuous random variable. Napakadali lang naman silang i-differentiate. When you say discrete random variable, yung mga values represented, yung mga value nito na nire-represent natin, we are going to use count data. Yun yung gagamitin natin. This only happens, kailan lang natin makakagamit ng count data. This happens when the set of possible outcomes from an experiment can be counted. Kapag nabibilang natin yung outcome ng experiment. Bibilang lang tayo ng number of dots, bibilang lang tayo ng check marks, kung ilan yung tinamaan mong sagot, bibilang ka lang ng ilan yung yellow ball, bibilang ka lang ilan yung iPhone na nabenta mo, ilang ice cream yung nabenta mo, ilang shawarma. Kaya napakadali niyan kasi discrete yan. No? Yan. Meron tayong mga example dyan. Pero on the other hand, when we say continuous random variable, yung values natin dito sa ating random variable ay continuous scale. Nangyayari to kapag yung mga outcomes natin ay hindi pwedeng bilangin. Hindi natin siya pwedeng bilangin by eyes, by pointing at them. Hindi natin siya mabibilang ng ganon. We can only give values to them when we try to measure the random experiment. For example, basta may measure, length of anything, measure of time, measure of distance, yan. Yung ano natin, overtime accumulated time yan, di ba? Blood pressure, weight, speed, the real numbers from 1 to 6. Syempre, ang daming real numbers from 1 to 6 we have to measure. Na infinitely many. So, yun yung pagkakaiba. So, kapag nag-assign ng variable, bilangin mo nga yung yellow dyan, o nabibilang mo siya, that's discrete. Bilangin mo nga yung ilan yung building na meron tayo sa isang school, in a DepEd school, a government school. Ayan. Pag nabibilang mo siya, that's discrete random variable. Pero kapag yung pinapagawa, yung experiment na gagawin, cannot be counted, but rather be measured. Tandaan mo, it's continuous. Okay? Gagamit ka ng measuring tool. Okay. Your first activity is to state whether the following variable is discrete or continuous. Okay, you may pause this video and then take a screenshot and answer this. Okay, or pause And then sagutan nyo agad para hindi nyo makalimutan yung discussion natin. Because in our Google Classroom, there will be a part there where you can submit your answer for this part of activity. Okay? Medyo nabago na, no? Kailangan nasa loob ng activity nasa loob ng discussion yung activity natin to ensure that everyone is listening. Okay, let us proceed. Just pause this video if you need to. Now, after identifying or distinguishing continuous from discrete random variable and illustrating a random variable by representing through real numbers, ngayon, mag-a-assign na tayo ng mga possible values of a random variable. Now, we will try to do or simulate how to have the random variable. Okay, let's have this first example. Suppose 2 coins are tossed. Dalawang coins. Let's see. Kailangan meron tayong capital letter. No? Yung capital letter na to, it represent our random variable. Okay? Let our random variable z be the number of heads. Number of heads. So, pinibilang mo yan, ibig sabihin possible values yan. Counted yan. So, discrete yan. So, we will be dealing more of discrete. Later part ng semester tayo magdi-deal with the normal random variable. So, magpo-focus mo tayo sa discrete random variable. Find the values of the random variable z. So, what you will do when you are finding the possible values of a random variable, ang una mong gagawin is to determine the sample space of the experiment. Aalamin mo muna. So, when you toss 2 coins, here are the possible outcomes. No? Kailangan alamin muna natin yung sample space. Ayan yung sample space natin. When we try to toss 2 coins. So, we have tail, 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 head, head, tail, head, head. Ayan. So, 4. And then, after you have the sample space, dapat alam natin yung lahat ng sample space na yon. Kung marami mang experiment yun, we have to find ways to systematically identify all the possible outcomes. After that, you now have to count what is needed to be counted or what is asked by the random variable represented. No, kung bawa, ang sabi dito sa ating random variable z is the number of heads, may isa-isahin mo yan. Yung first outcome natin na dalawang tail, we have here 0 heads. 0 head. Tail head, we have 1 head. Head head, we have 2 heads. Head tail, we have 1 head. So, ganun lang kadali yung random variable. Kaya lang, there are 2 things that you should be particular to. First one is identifying all the possible outcomes. Second is to be clear on what needs to be counted or what needs to be counted. Yun lang naman yung dalawa eh. Minsan nagkakamali ang mga bata kasi minsan sumusobra yung possible outcomes, minsan naman kulang. Minsan kung tama yung possible outcomes, mali naman yung pagkakabilang ng number of random variables or number of heads sa ating assigned values ng random variables. So you have to be particular at that. So when you have this one, you now have the possible values of the random variables. So yun siya. Okay? Let's have another example. Suppose two iPhones are tested at random. We want to find out the number of defective iPhone. No? So, ang goal natin is defective iPhone yung bibilangin natin. So, expect natin that our random variable y will be about the defective iPhone. And let D represent the defective iPhone and let N for the non-defective iPhone. So, dito binigay na yung mga representation. So, if we have two phones to be tested, no, ang possible outcomes natin will be, it could be, the first one, the two iPhones are defective. Pwedeng ganyan. Pwedeng, yung una ay defective, yung isa ay non-defective. Non-defective, defective, non-defective, non-defective. Okay? And then, ang gagawin lang natin, as assigned on the random variable y, we have to find the number of defective iPhones. Ilan lang yung defective? So, on our first one, we have 2, 1, 1, and then 0. Okay? So, ang ating random variable, y, is only from 0, 1, and 2. So, pwede mo siyang i-express ng ganyan. Our random variable y are from 0, 1, and 2. Yan yung sample space ng ating random variable y. Okay? Total sample space of the random variable. Kasi, tinransform na natin itong ating sample space into random variable. No? Ganon din yung another explanation of random variable. Let's have our third example. Suppose three laptops are tested at random. We want to find out the number of non-defective laptops. Non-defective naman tayo. Let D represents the defective laptop and N represents the non-defective laptop. If we let X be the random variable, nakita nyo, X yan, representing the number of non-defective laptops, show the values of the random variable X. So, ang gagawin natin, tatlong laptop yan, D and N ang gagamitin natin. So, ang systematic way kasi dito is, doon tayo sa dulo magbabago, mag-change until we successfully run through all the possible condition of the laptop. Dalawa lang naman yun defective and non-defective. So, let's say tatlong defective yan. On our second one, baguhin lang natin yung pangalawa, ay yung pinaka-last one, non-defective. Since we have run through this, yung pangalawan yung baguhin natin. So, defective, non-defective, defective, defective, non-defective, non-defective. So, nakita nyo yung pattern? Yung second part, yung third part, hindi na bago, DN, DN. Yung second part, pinalitan natin yung lahat ng N. So, lastly, yung una naman ang papalitan natin, lahat yung gagawin natin N. Since we're done with the D, tapos copy lang natin yan. DD, DN, ND, NN. I hope you got my systematic way on listing possible outcomes. And then, we are going to try to count the number of non-defective laptops. So, yung N lang yung kakount natin. You have your 0, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 3. Napakadali lang ng random variable. No, we are now, kasi itong ating outcome sa ating random experiment, hindi siya represented through real numbers. Ang goal ni random variable is maging real number siya. From this outcome, maging real number yung kanyang outcome. So yun lang naman ang gustong mangyari ni random variable. Why? Maiintindihan natin yung kahalagahan nito kapag nandun tayo sa mga susunod pa nating discussion. So, napakahalaga na maging real number yan. First, para makagawa tayo ng computation. Kasi we cannot make computation out of this, outcomes. Hindi tayo makakagawa ng computation dyan. But with this one, with the goal of finding the non-defective laptop, nakakagawa tayo dyan. We can compute for any central tendency possible. No, so kaya napaka-importante ng random variable. Number 4, suppose two balls are drawn in succession without replacement from a box containing 3 blue balls and 4 yellow balls. Let Z be the random variable representing the number of yellow balls. Ito, kailangan natin ng permutation, no? Kailangan natin ng idea ng permutation. So, we have 7 balls in our container, in our box. No, and you are just required to get 2 balls drawn in succession. Ibig sabihin, pagkakuha mo ng isa, susunod mo na yung pangalawa. So it matter the position matters, that's one thing. And then kasi succession siya. So it matters kung ano yung mapipili natin. So ngayon, since yellow ball and saka blue ball lang yan, we only have 4 possible outcome. It's either yung una nating ball na makuha ay blue at ang sumunod ay blue ulit, or blue, yung una natin, yellow yung pangalawa. It's possible naman na yellow yung mauna, tapos blue yung pumangalawa, or parehas na yellow yung makuha natin sa ating box, so containing these 7 balls. Now the question is, in how many ways we can have this kind of possible outcomes? Kasi ilan yung blue dyan? 3, diba? So maraming possible outcomes. So ganito ang gagawin natin. We will rely on the possible outcomes and the given 3 blue balls and 4 yellow balls. So on our first outcome, sabi dito, ang una natin nakuha ball ay blue. So on our first draw, we have 3 possible blue balls to get. So since nakuha na natin isang blue ball, yung pangalawang ball natin ay dapat maging blue din. But dahil nakuha mo na yung una, yung pangalawa mo ay 2 blue balls na lang ang possible mong makuha. all in all, if we have this permutation, we have a total number of outcome of 6. Ayan. Ganyan siya. This is called counting technique, no? And permutation as well. So, probably counting technique, yan, combination siya ng dalawa. So, ngayon, kung yung pangalawa natin is blue and yellow, we have 3 blue. Ilan yung yellow natin doon? Di naman mababawasan yung yellow kasi ang una natin nakuha ay blue. So, we have 12 in total. So, ganun lang yung logic mo. So, from yellow and blue, babalitan rin natin yan. 4 times 3, that's 12. Okay? And then now, this is yellow, yellow. So, on the first draw, we have 4 yellow. Pero dahil nakuha na natin yung unang yellow, there are only 3 yellow balls left in the box. So, we have here 12 again. Yan. So, ilan yung total number of outcomes natin dyan? Ilan ang total number of outcomes natin? Dami, di ba? Pero let's check. What is the number of yellow balls? Value of the random variable y or the number of yellow balls. Ilan ang yellow balls na pwede nating makuha? No? So kasi marami tayong possible combination. So ang pwede nating gawin dyan, dito, ilang yellow balls ang pwede nating makuha on our first try, that's 0. Dito tayo tumingin. Dito ay we have 1. We have here 1. We have here 2. Okay. So, napaka-importante na ito yung possible outcomes na makuha natin, no? Ito yung magiging sagot natin. Yan. So, kung ilang bibilangan lang naman yung ilang yellow. Pero later on, in our next lesson, magmamatter na kung ilang beses sila mangyayari. So, we have here 6 times tayo makakakuha ng 0 yellow ball. 12 times tayo makakakuha ng 1 yellow ball. 12 times tayo makakakuha ng 1 yellow ball. 12 times tayo makakakuha ng 2 yellow ball. But the only question here is the value of the random variable. So, ito lang nasa box yung gagamitin natin. But this just has the incorporation of permutation. So, yan. So, ito pa rin na ating maging ending. Kaya lang, it matters ilang beses siya mangyayari. Kasi we are listing all the possible outcomes. 6 na BB, 12 na BY, 12 na YB, 12 na YY. Okay? I hope that's clear to everyone. And how do we check if tama to? This is 42, no? If we have 7 balls in total, unang draw natin, there are 7 possible balls to be taken and there are 6 left there for the second ball. That's 42. So yan, tama yan kung ilan yung bilang ng outcomes natin. Pero since we are only in a random variable, bibilangan lang natin ilan yung yellow at blue sa ating mga possible outcomes. Kaya kailangan nyo re-reviewin yung natin yung statistics discussion. Now, for the second part of your activity, here are the questions, no? So a box contains 3 $1 bill, 2 $5 bills, and 5 $10 bills, and 1 $20 bill. Construct a probability distribution for the data if X represent the value of the single bill drawn at random and then replaced. Parang yung last example natin, bibilangan nyo lang yung possible combination. Huwag nyo na ilista yung ilang beses sila mangyayari kasi yung nakabox lang naman yung kailangan. Family with children, construct a probability distribution for a family with 3 children. Let X represent the number of boys. So, bibilangin lang ang box. Okay? Number 1 pala, single bill lang, no? Napakadali lang nitong number 1. Okay, so, please follow for the next video discussion on the probability distribution naman tayo. Dito kasi pinapakonstruct na kayo ng probability distribution pero ang gagawin nyo lang muna is counting the possible values of random variables. Okay? Pati sa number 2. Gagawin nyo lang dyan is to show a probability, to show possible values of random variables. Okay? See you on our next discussion. See ya!